Hi everybody, it's Julie Spencer, author of the Buxton Peak series. We are part of the way into chapter 1 right now, so we're halfway through chapter 1. If you haven't had a chance to listen to chapter 1, listen to the first half of chapter 1, I strongly recommend going back and doing that. You probably won't understand the second part of chapter 1 if you haven't read the first. So, continuing on. So, let's take it from the top. Stacy's fingers hovered over the keys of her laptop and Megan's stomach dropped. Why did I agree to this? You met Ian at church, right? What city? We were both in Houghton Lake at the time. I was visiting my aunt and he was passing through with his entourage, just like you guessed. The clicking of the keys was a little unnerving. Stacy typed almost as fast as Megan talked. Were the rest of the band members with him? Did they all come to church? No. He just had his bodyguard with him. I think the other guys were still on the tour bus, but I never saw them that day. Megan took a sip of her Diet Coke. And you honestly didn't know who he was? Why do you say it that way? Megan asked. Like you don't believe me. I just find it hard to understand how a college-age girl can be so isolated from the real world that she doesn't recognize a megastar like Ian Taylor. Buxton Peak has a ton of #1 songs, music awards, world tours, the works. Stacy's hands became animated as she listed the reasons why Megan should have recognized Ian. Stacy shook her head and raised her eyebrows. How could you have not known? I don't listen to hard rock music, Megan said. I do now. I've listened to all my husband's songs, of course, but I always turn back to my classical music. Hard rock is too hard. Stacy threw her head back and laughed. Her long curls fell out of her sloppy bun she'd had it tied in, and she quickly swept it back up in a scrunchie and got serious again. By definition, hard rock is definitely hard. She focused on her computer screen while typing feverishly. You're mocking me, aren't you? Megan crossed her arms and sat back in her chair. I'm just a huge Buxton Peak fan, that's all. I know everything about the band. I highly doubt that, Megan grumbled. All right, I'm exaggerating. So what? Let's get on to the interview. What else do you want to know? Megan was still closed off, arms crossed, sitting back in her chair, eyebrows creased and a frown dominating her face. Was it love at first sight? Stacy wagged her eyebrows playfully. For him it was. Megan couldn't hide the little grin she felt pulling at the corners of her mouth. Stacy placed both hands on the table and looked like she was going to jump out of her seat. Not for you? You weren't attracted to him? Stacy's jaw dropped as she let her question hang in the air. Well, of course I was attracted to him. Ian's hot. Megan bit her lip and looked away, trying to hide the blush that was rushing to her cheeks. The 2 weeks spent on their honeymoon and the nights they'd shared reminded her exactly how true that statement was. She pulled herself back to reality and the task at hand. She cleared her throat and looked back at Stacy, who now had a knowing smirk on her face. But as far as love at first sight, Ian had this immediate notion he was going to marry me, and it kind of freaked me out. I didn't want a boyfriend until after I graduated college, and especially not an irresponsible kid who was skipping college and traveling the world goofing off. Didn't that kind of cue you in that he was more than he was telling you? Yeah, looking back now, there were so many things that should have tipped me off, Megan nodded. I guess I was really naive. And you didn't find out he was a rock star until the day he proposed to you on live television and then sang that song he wrote for you? I didn't even see the live broadcast and his interview when he proposed to me. I don't watch Good Morning America. Megan shook her head and chuckled. My suite mate saw it and started hollering from the other room, freaking out really. By the time I ran in there, it was commercial. Megan stopped, staring off into space, remembering that day, and cherished the feelings she'd had watching Ian sing to her on live television. And then what? Stacy had her chin in her hand, leaning forward on the table, the keyboard forgotten for now. When the commercial was over, I watched the boy I loved sing to me on live television, a song he'd written for me. Megan and Stacy sighed at the same time. That is the most romantic story ever, Stacy said. He's the most romantic man I've ever met. I'm so jealous. Stacy sighed again and shook her head. When I met him on Access Hollywood, I was so starstruck. It was embarrassing. I can't even imagine what it would be to marry him. You know what's cool about it though, Megan said? I'm not starstruck by him. He's just Ian to me. He's mostly just a goofy kid who occasionally puts on this mask and pretends he's an adult. And for some strange reason, he's in love with me. And you're in love with him. Oh my gosh, yes, Megan said. And she and Stacy both laughed, toasted with their cups of McDonald's pop, sat back and smiled at one another. One more thing I don't understand. Stacy sat back forward and held her fingers over the keyboard again. Why is he in Europe and you're in Michigan? You're going to be rich for the rest of your lives. Why do you even need to finish college? Did you finish college? Of course, but I need my degree to make a living. No, you don't. You're a good enough writer that no one would ever question if you had finished your degree or if you'd quit before your last semester. Megan pursed her lips and raised her eyebrows. So, why did you finish? Stacy sat back and creased her forehead. I did it for me. Exactly. I like your style, Megan Muggenberg. It's Megan Taylor now. Megan smirked at the blogger who had been searching for her this past few months, felt vindicated. She nodded slightly. I'm Megan Taylor. Okay, we'll go on to chapter 2 in just a moment. See you on the next video.